Good evening, everyone. It's working? Good? Okay, good. Good evening. My name is Eric Phillips, Economic Development Director for Union County-Marysville. Thank you for coming to this event for the speaker series. This is our, I think, 10th event of the year. And tonight we have a really great session to learn about growth and development from an Ohio and also from a regional perspective. And two great people who lead a lot of efforts throughout the state of Ohio and through our central Ohio as well. But Lydia, I want to introduce her, Lydia Mihalik, who is the Director of Development for the state of Ohio. Before that, she was Mayor Finley. Been to Japan with Lydia and Kenny twice, and then with Kenny in Japan once. But Lydia has been a great leader, leading the Department of Development for the last few years, and we appreciate her attendance. We also have Kenny McDonald, who is now the President and CEO of the Columbus Partnership. Prior, he headed up One Columbus. He still kind of oversees One Columbus. He can never get economic development out of his blood, so he still has to have some control in economic development. But Kenny has been a leader for over 10 years in this region and has done some great things for our community and also for the region. So tonight's forum, a little bit different. I'm going to turn over to Lydia and then Kenny to talk a little bit about their perspective on economic development, on housing, what it means to Ohio, what it means to Central Ohio, and then go from there. So that's kind of tonight's forum, and then we have some prepared questions we're going to ask them and all that. So that's kind of the setup for this evening. But again, we have two great speakers that have huge impacts on our community every day, and can't say enough. We have probably the best economic development set up in the entire 50 states. No question about it, with leadership from Lydia and also JP at Jobs Ohio, and then our regional effort from Kenny McDonald. Can't say enough for what they do for us. So again, kudos to both of them. So first, I'm going to turn it over to Lydia, and she's going to talk a little bit about, from a state perspective, economic development and housing and what it means to Ohio.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Eric. Appreciate the opportunity. Well, good evening. Thank you so much for this chance to chat with you all in beautiful Marysville. This is such a thriving community, and when you get a chance to come and chat with people and folks who are very interested in what's happening relative to community and economic development, it's hard to say no. So I appreciate the chance. When we say Ohio is the heart of it all, this is exactly what we're talking about in communities just like Marysville here. Here, people know their neighbors, local businesses, and they're thriving here. Community spirit is absolutely undeniable in places like Marysville. But at the end of the day, what really sets places like Marysville apart, Marysville, Union County apart, is its absolute opportunity and its ability to really take its small town charm with all of the conveniences and opportunities here that are often found in bigger cities. You have a bustling Main Street with locally owned shops. You've got a very vibrant farmers market and some of the best restaurants in Central Ohio. I remember actually one of my favorite memories here, and it actually led to a great next chapter in my life, was being over here at the pavilion, the Honda Pavilion over here. Was when then Attorney General DeWine was running for his office as governor. And funny enough, one of the things I got to do as he was getting ready to arrive was to introduce Congressman Jordan. And so it's kind of funny how things are working out right now, but that was a fun memory for me. So anyway, all of the things that are happening here in the Marysville area, really helps paint a picture of a region that has a deeply rooted history. There is some deeply rooted passion in the community and its culture. But it's the way that you all have come together over time to really embrace progress that makes this community a shining example of Ohio's economic prosperity. which I think actually is what has brought us here today, to have a conversation about housing. Collaboration, partnership, community support are all the things that we have seen that help make job creation and economic development successful. But there's a vital piece of the puzzle that's very important, that's often overshadowed in the growth story, and that is housing. And before I give Kenny a chance here to chat, who I know is going to provide a great local perspective and some insight on this issue, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some of the discussions that we're having around housing at the state level, and specifically what we're doing at the DeWine Husted administration to address some of these particular challenges. And I kind of want to help frame the issue a little bit in a more personal way that might make sense, from a small town perspective. I mean, that's where I came from. Ohio for a really long time was challenged by a lack of maybe jobs and opportunity. A lot of our young people weren't staying home, right? They were going to other places, or they had to travel very far to be able to find good paying jobs, opportunities, and that's just not the case anymore. They have great opportunities, many opportunities here at home, or they don't have to travel very far to find great opportunities from home. What's nice about that is that we want them to be here, but a key component of having the opportunities that are either here at home or not too far, a quick drive from here, is that they have to have a place to live. Unless you're okay with them all hanging out at home in the basement, which some people are, but we like to have them leave the nest at some point. And so in order for that to become a reality, we have to have housing, more places for them to stay. And it takes all kinds of housing. And that could be senior housing or smaller housing for our parents to be able to move to, so that our kids and grandkids can move into the existing housing stock. That could be apartments, so that as our kids are transitioning into the workforce and maybe saving up some dollars before they can actually own a home, they have to have a place to be able to stay while they put money in their savings accounts. And there are a whole host of things that go into that, but we want them to be able to stay here, in the place where they grew up, in the place that we call home. And so there are a lot of things that come with success and opportunity, and so we need to do some things here now from the administration's perspective that can help fulfill those dreams and aspirations that we have for our kids. We're in a really good spot right now in Ohio. People aren't necessarily leaving in droves like they used to be. Now we're challenged relative to our population because for the first time ever in Ohio's history, our mortality rate is surpassing our fertility rate. We're just not having as many kids as we used to. I like to say that we're not all on the Mike DeWine plan. I had 3 kids. I feel like I've done my job. But until we can fix that fertility rate issue, we have to work on the migration. We have to work on migration in order to increase our population. But we have more jobs now in our communities than we can find people to fill them. And that's a good thing. We certainly don't want Kenny and Eric to stop doing that, because that's good for our communities. But in order for us to continue to thrive and prosper, we've got to address the challenges related to housing. And it's an issue now, and it will certainly be an even bigger issue into the future. So we have a lot of things in the budget. We have a lot of things in the budget relative to incentives to help support the development of housing. Of course, with inflation and other cost pressures across not just Ohio, but across the country and across the world, building new housing or refurbishing existing housing stock, things are expensive right now. Heck, going to the store and buying a gallon of milk these days is expensive. And so what we're trying to do is to utilize the resources that we have at the state level to be a partner to our local friends, to help them support the development of housing so that we have the units so our families can stay close to home. So between tax credits to help with the development of new housing, between grants and other resources to help the land banks rehabilitate existing housing stock with our Welcome Home Ohio program, there is a total, depending upon which program you want to talk about, and we can certainly address this maybe in the question session, but there's a total of about $750 million worth of new programs to help communities, whatever they want to do, develop the necessary housing that is in demand here currently right now. And the General Assembly also is currently working through the Senate on a select housing committee to look at other gaps that may potentially be there so that we can help meet the needs. And of course, we're also investing in our communities to take care of the needs that are there relative to brownfield remediation, site development issues, to take care of blight, water and wastewater assistance that I know Union County has been able to take advantage of over the last couple of years. But look, whether you are a city official, a county commissioner, a small business owner, or a Union County resident, I know that you are very passionate about your community, and the partnerships that we share with every single one of you are very key to Ohio's continued success. First and foremost, Mike DeWine would say that we're here to listen to you. And second, we're here to be solution focused. We do not have all the answers at our fingertips, but what I can guarantee each and every one of you is that we're here to try and figure out these solutions together. So with that, we certainly want to continue to be a great partner with Union County to make sure that it's at the top of anyone's list when they're looking for a place to call home. So Kenny, I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
First of all, thank you to the entire room. It's a beautiful fall evening. To come and talk about community development issues shows that you're passionate about your community, and we appreciate it. I also want to thank Eric. I think this is maybe the 6th of these sessions you've 10 of these sessions you've held. And while we're doing a lot of this around our 11 county region and talking to townships and cities and growing places from really from Mount Vernon to Circleville to Bell Fountain, it's a common issue everywhere. And then finally, I want to say to have a cabinet member come out and spend an evening talking about this shows you your appreciation for her work, and also the seriousness of the issue that we're talking about tonight. Housing and growth is a really interesting topic. I see Mark Williams from the Dispatch here, and Mark and I dug up an old newspaper from 27 years ago, a couple months ago, that was about the growth of our region and the price of progress, I think it was called, a special section about the growth in Central Ohio and how it was kind of overwhelming us. And in fact, we were growing faster in 1996. We're growing at almost 6% as a region, and we're growing at about maybe 4.5% now, population-wise. Now, the numbers get larger because we were a much larger region now. So about every 5 years, you can count on about 100,000 people moving to Central Ohio. Half of those people traditionally land inside of Franklin County somewhere, and about half are spread out around our MSA, around the area. And because you have built a terrific part of our region, a lot of them actually choose this location because it's a great place, great schools, housing options for them, whether they wanted to live in a rural setting, they wanted to live in a community like Marysville, or they wanted to maybe even live a little closer to Dublin or something. Like, they had lots of options in this area, so you continue to attract people in this corridor. But jobs is actually really the driver of it. As far as I know, we haven't moved the mountains or the beaches any closer to Central Ohio, so most people are coming for the jobs. And I'll try to just give a little context for what maybe a perspective on our work. I came 13 years ago to do economic development here and to set up our regional group. And the question at that time was much different. It was, in fact, completely different. It was, could we create a dynamic, fast-growing region in the middle of the Midwest? Because there wasn't really one happening. And with a lot of work and a lot of communities, a lot of people locking arms, stacking hands, we went out into the world and presented our product, and sure enough, it's a great product, and a lot of people have gravitated here. And then a lot of those workers have gravitated here from around Ohio, from around the Midwest, and in fact around the world, to work at some of the companies that have been brought here, and then joined the great companies like Honda and Scott's and others that we already had that continue to grow in our backyard. Now it's a different question. It's, can we actually continue to grow in a planful, thoughtful way, and can we also maybe close some of the gaps? And so the Columbus Partnership is a group of CEOs who are thinking a lot about really 5 issues. We'll never take our eyes off the ball of economic development. That's issue number 1, always having a long-term plan. But then there's 4 others that I think are real obstacles for us right now, and they're kind of generational, and they're not issues that we are going to solve overnight. Number 1 is creating safe, clean, healthy communities. And can we be really planful about how to do that? Public safety has risen as an issue in metropolitan areas across the country, and then kind of closing some of these health equity gaps that we have in different zip codes across our market, whether they're rural communities or urban communities and everything in between, takes a lot of work and involves things like transit and how we're going to move people around and remove obstacles. Number 2 is also, I'd say, a new one for us in Central Ohio, and that is what I would call affordability. Now, housing is the biggest component of that. We don't want people spending more than 30% of their paycheck on housing, and when we get in an unbalanced situation like we are right now in supply and demand of housing, then those prices go up, and for working people in our region, those numbers are getting above 30% for far too many people probably. And what it's doing is pricing people out of the market, especially with the interest rates going up. Now, there's other things as part of that, taxes, child care, that are big pieces of affordability. But that's a new challenge for our region, and always been a calling card of a mid-sized market in the Midwest. We have a great place. We're really proud of the communities we have across Central Ohio. But a big part of that is we want to enjoy that because it's affordable. It's not Boston, it's not San Diego, where they have to work on these issues all the time. And then 2 final ones are also big issues: workforce, talent, education, which are just one bucket for me. How to make all that work and deliver, train new people for the emerging industries we have, and finally to work on the infrastructure. That would be the 4th bucket for me, and that's, what's a 22nd century energy plan for our region look like? How do we build the water and wastewater lines that we need, the basic utility services? And then how do we tackle transportation and moving people around our region and into different types of employment centers? We've had all this big industrial boom at the same time that we've had the work from home movement. So 2 very different things. We've got more industry coming to our region, and in fact our country, than we've had since the end of World War II. And thankfully we're winning a lot of that. But we also have this phenomenon post-COVID of people working from home, and there's people here in Marysville that are working for companies all over the world and living here because of the lifestyle and the community that you provide. those are all treated, they're all good things and they're all interrelated things. And housing is kind of at the heart of it. And so I enjoy being part of these conversations. Hopefully we can get to the questions and we can provide a little additional perspective. I'll just end my my remarks by saying how grateful I am for the work that you do. And there's a lot of partners in the audience tonight that we work with every day on all these issues. And the goal of economic development is not to just grow. The goal of economic development is to, in fact, develop your economy and to be in a good position for your kids, for your grandkids, to always pass along a good future. And that requires conversations like these, even if we don't agree on all those issues, and then to be very innovative about the tools. And I'll give Director Mihalik a great deal of credit that they've been very creative and at the table with us trying to find solutions in a very difficult time. Growing markets, increased interest rates, kind of new social issues with some of the post-COVID future of work stuff, and trying to fit this all together is not easy. So again, these conversations and having really good leaders like Eric and Director Mihalik working on them every day with us is really important. So Eric, I'll turn it back over to you for questions, and again, thank you for showing up tonight.
Great job, Lydia, and also Director Mihalik, and also Kenny for those comments. We started, actually it's number 9. I was incorrect. 10 is coming up on November 1st, but we so we've had 9 of these. This is our 9th one, and really the focus has been on how we grow our economy, how we grow. It's so important as we move forward. A lot of these people in this crowd probably are more pro-growth. They want to discuss growth and have that dialogue as well. And I'm going to go off script here with a question for both of you, but I want to get right to the point here. We have I looked today, 8,400 jobs available, unfilled within a 20-mile. And some of the people in the room get sick of hearing me say these stats, but 8,400 jobs unfilled within a 20-mile radius of Marysville. We have 500 engineering jobs in the county that cannot be filled today. We are only growing 1.2 people a day in Marysville. We're growing about 3 in the county total. Yet some people want to maintain their small town atmosphere. They are scared of growth. They're fearful of new housing. Yet today we had a ribbon or a groundbreaking for 240 new apartments. So if you go on Marysville, people know everyone's upset. Rage is a strong word, but upset about all this new housing coming, and what are we supposed to do with all this new housing? Yet yet they celebrate restaurants opening and retail businesses opening, and there's no correlation between how they both work together. So from your all's experience, both of your experiences, why is housing so important to economic development and the growth of a community?
We haven't always had to talk about this subject. It was like, we have housing. It just kind of rolls along. And it was maybe 2018, we were doing a bunch of planning for the region and thinking about the next decade. Seems like 100 years ago, 2018 before COVID. But we started to see numbers and we said, we really are underbuilding housing in our region when we look across the metro area by about half. So it's not even close. Like we used to build about 20,000 units about 20 years ago. And then the Great Recession of 07, 08, 09 kind of came along and tipped the housing market around the country upside down. And we never really started building units in any of the metro markets the way we did before. But we in particular underperformed. And maybe there's actually a very complex answer to that. There's a bunch of reasons why that's the case. But in fact, we just haven't been building enough housing for now almost 15 years. And so it sort of compounds year after year, and you kind of get upside down. Markets like Marysville always had a way to keep up with that. But now even great markets like this that have been, growing and kind of keeping a balanced economy have started to get out of balance. And there's some ways that that's showing up and getting attention. Most recently, it's in your assessments. Anybody concerned about skyrocketing assessments? I was in Powell this morning and asked the same question of a group of about 50 business owners, and there was a lot of grumbling, and there was a couple of guys saying, yeah, my assessment went up 86% or some astronomical number. And I said, it's really because of the imbalance, right? And so it isn't that we need everybody to just build wildly and add thousands of homes here and there and not be planful about land use planning and all this stuff. But we do, in fact, as a region, have to get back into balance. It's not going to happen overnight, but when we do, our affordability across the board goes way up. Well, you know, the affordable housing conversation and subsidized housing and stuff. In fact, the most important part of this is just having the supply and demand relatively in order. And then I'll end with one final stat, because when we look at the health of our region and building a workforce, housing as a part of that strategy, we have an unbelievable area. We have a great economy. We're producing jobs. You just said it. In fact, I think the more houses we built, we would fill them. And I think there's communities in this country that you could build them and they wouldn't come, because they're not building the economy that you are building here and that they're working at a state level and regional level to do. In fact, we are doing that work and we're being successful. A lot of responsibility comes with that. And some of our forefathers, and if you go back in Ohio history, we had these boom cycles occasionally, and that's when they built the schools. That's when the roads were built. Maybe theaters like this were built, and that's when some of the neighborhoods that we live in were built as well. And so we're faced with the difficult decisions and the financial decisions about how do we do this, and that's where having, you know, technical partners and great state leadership and stuff really come into favor, and we figure out actually how we're going to finance and do this stuff.
Those are all very, very good points, Kenny. And, you know, I think we are, I've said this before, you've heard the governor say this, and I feel like we've all been singing from the same hymnal in a way. This really is Ohio's time. It's more than just, you know, a great line in a speech. Things are aligned now for us. And for years, I think Kenny's right, you know, back up until 2006, 2007, when we had the Great Recession, housing development in general occurred naturally through the market. And that occurred in large part because they had no problem getting financing to do these things and build these speculative developments, and they filled up because they were available, and it all worked out. And that just has not happened at the same rate that it used to. In fact, it just hasn't happened at all. And it's not just in the major metros. It's actually been even more pronounced in our more rural areas across the state. And the way I look at this is we have been very intentional at the state level in working with our partners in the General Assembly and making billions of dollars available to our local partners to do infrastructure improvements, to help with affordability on utilities, right? So whether that's, you know, long-awaited plant upgrades, whether that's utility extensions, whether that's helping with lead lines, whether that's helping with brownfields that have been sitting in communities, or helping with blighted vacant buildings in our downtowns. We have been investing a lot and helping to create what I would say an environment that's conducive for investment. And our economic development professionals have been doing a really good job of, you know, marketing the state to, you know, some of the world's largest job creators who are taking notice, which is great, but also helping with those business expansion and retention calls to our existing companies. And they're doing a great job of creating new jobs here in our state. And so what I have said to our economic development professionals pretty intentionally in the last couple of months is that we as economic development professionals need to start chasing housing development just as aggressively as we have been chasing industrial development in the last 20 or 30 years. And that means it has to be well planned. It has to be well thought out. It has to be what the community wants and needs. But housing is economic development. And it is vitally important because we can't continue to grow without it. And so we can't just expect it to just happen on its own. We have to be just as hungry for those housing developments as we are for those jobs. And what also is starting to go hand in hand with housing development is also childcare. Like, these are things that are all coming into play at the same time. And so I think it's becoming, economic development is becoming, I think, maybe a little more complex than what it used to be, which is great, right? And what's nice about the situation I think that Ohio is in is that we get to choose, right? Because we're in a really healthy situation. We're a great environment to do business. We're super affordable to do business here. We've done a lot relative to making sure that our regulations are in a business-friendly environment. Like, this is our time, back to what I said when I started. Like, there are states that would kill to have the opportunity that we have right now. But if we have to be hungry, we can't just wait for things to happen. And I just think the stars are aligned. We have the resources available right now, and we have to take advantage of this particular moment in time.
Great comments. I know, Kenny, you hit on something. The BIA's in Central Ohio has done a lot of work of building housing needs assessment. And I think they've equated one job equals one house kind of equation. But really, that's going forward. We need to catch up because we've had a deficit. So a lot of times, 8,400 jobs available in 20 miles. So somehow we got to find housing to catch up before we get to that one job equals one house. Is that not correct?
Yeah, I think John says a house is where a job goes at night. And we have a road show that we do with him, and he has a lot of stats and stuff. I'll offer another one. We're constantly comparing ourselves to other markets and stuff. So we look at Indianapolis, two metro areas that look a lot alike. Back in the 90s, when I was referring to the really big growth spurt, mostly that we actually had out here. That's when Dublin really kind of exploded, Powell, and there was lots of the Olentangy school district and stuff in that area really kind of grew in our region. We were building the suburbs very rapidly, and many of you might even live in some of them. And when I look at our market now, we're building about twice as many houses as Indianapolis is in their city. So Columbus versus Indianapolis cities. But we're building about half as much in the suburbs and the ex-urban markets as Indianapolis is doing. And so you double click and say, well, why is that? And there's just some different policies that they have. They allow people to build on slab. They've been, some of their suburbs have been pretty aggressive about building some of this stuff. And in fact, when I look at the population growth numbers, for the first time in 12 years, Indianapolis as a MSA is actually growing faster than the Columbus MSA now. And as somebody who's always in competition with these guys, what I translate that into is they are going to have a few more workers than I'm going to have. And so when I go to that local business and say, I know you got these open positions, and they're wondering if they're going to expand here, or they're going to move to Indianapolis or Nashville or something like that, it makes our case a little weaker. So housing is actually a part of our competitive strategy too. So I don't know if catch up is the right word, Eric, because that connotates that we can just, really turn it around. I think we have to intervene. We have to understand the problem, and then we do have to start to really make change, because our goal should just be to get in balance. Our goal should be to get this back in balance, because they'll have a dramatic effect on affordability, and it will get those numbers down for normal working people down to that 30% number or less, which allows them to go out to dinner, and they have good jobs. We have an unbelievable unemployment rate, right? It allows them to buy a car. Where's Bruce in here? Allows them to buy a Honda. Allows them to go to dinner. Allows them to have some discretionary spending. And that is the thing that kind of really builds our community. And in fact, all of this should contribute to a better police force and parks and all those things too. And so that's part of that mix. So we're into the numbers. We're constantly comparing ourselves. But bottom line is, it's pretty clear that we're out of balance.
Very good. Another question for both of you too. So in a couple of years, Marysville will realize about 2,000 new apartments built in the Marysville area. And we call them regularly. They're filled up as soon as they build these apartments. The average home price in Marysville is about $400,000, or actually in the county is $400,000. For a new build, it goes up closer to $500,000. It's the second highest home price in the state of Ohio, next to our friends to the east in Delaware County. Yet Marysville, the electorate in the city of Marysville has a big decision on November 7th. We have our first referendum ever on a 650-unit development, which includes townhomes, different housing, and so forth. And it's a big decision for the city because there are concerns about the schools and the growth in the schools. There's concern about infrastructure, traffic, and so forth. How does a community resolve the conflict between maintaining your small town atmosphere, yet you accept growth as we go forward?
Well, I think these are difficult community conversations, and I think it's important to be clear about what things are and what they aren't. And I think the more specific you are, and the individuals who are speaking about, what's happening in the community, or the leaders in a particular community, I think the more clear and concise they are to the electorate or the community members, I think the better. We are in some very interesting times, and in the era of social media, where things can get pretty elevated very quickly. I think that it can be very difficult. But when everyone has the right information, and everyone is, everyone can see, in fact, what things are, and there's nothing hidden, I think that can go a long way. But that has a lot to do with making sure that there's trust in what the plan is. And that trust can be eliminated in an instant. And what I said earlier about how communities need to be intentional about what the plan is moving forward, and make sure that you know what you want to be when you grow up. And they just can't happen. You can't just sit around and wait for things to happen to you. Because if you sit around and you wait for things to happen to you, then they typically don't go the way you want them to go. So this is a moment in time, I would say, that if you are clear and concise about what it is that could happen, and what it is going to be, and what you want, then that is what will occur. If there are nuances, and there is confusion, and there is division amongst the ranks, then you won't get anywhere. So I think what I said before is housing development is economic development, and it takes some really strong leadership to pull these things across the finish line. And I think you have that capability here, and I think that's probably the key.
We actually have all these flash bulbs going off, and we've announced projects and job creation things, and there's things being announced at a local level constantly. And I think a rational response is to actually say, whoa. I mean, I know how, again, after COVID, it's just, could something just stand still for a while? Watch the news tonight. You'll say, can we just back up a little bit? And so I think it's a very rational response in most of our communities that they're wanting to say, can we slow down and really think about this? And I think that's not only a rational response, but not a bad response. I will say that standing still is usually really going backwards, though. And that's where I think communities will get hurt and actually come out on the wrong end, both financially and culturally. They'll actually lose the character of the communities that they've worked so hard to build if they're not planful about it and decide that they're going to grow in the way that they want to grow. And as we bring new people into our region and into our communities, we didn't all we're all born here and show up here from day one either. And I think we got to celebrate that and kind of fold people into these different environments. When you talk about people moving into multifamily, by the way, it used to be when we were in balance, people that moved in multifamily, that was their gateway maybe to ultimately getting into a single family home or something. But today we hit we're at 8% now. How many people in the room have a mortgage that is less than 5%? How many people in the room have a mortgage that's less than 3%? Yeah. So you're not going anywhere probably anytime soon. I have one that's a little less than 3%, and then with the way that prices are going up and you have a mortgage less than that. So we have people that are staying in homes that would have, if the rates were still what they were maybe 3 years ago, many of you might have sold and moved and changed, and as maybe you got older, you moved into a different type of house, and a family would move into a 4-bedroom house you had or something like that. That's all been stalled. The rates have went up, and more people are staying in apartments or having to move into apartments than ever before. And so it isn't what it was moving into an apartment 8 or 10 years ago. These are families moving into these apartments in some cases, or single people that are kind of stalling the building of a family because of their financial situation right now, and they're going into an apartment. So it's a much different dynamic than it was before. We got to keep really looking at the data and figuring that out, and that should inform some of the decisions that you have to make.
Kenny, that's a really good point. I think if you, first of all, most young professionals or people who are either coming out of high school or they're coming out of a 2-year institution or a 4-year institution, they either have a lot of debt, they have a lot of college debt, or they don't have a lot of college debt, and they have a good paying job. Let's say it's a $30 an hour job. If they're coming out of high school, they got a great job. But they're paying a lot of money. If they have children, they're paying a ton of money in childcare. Childcare is really expensive. It eats up that paycheck really, really quick. They're paying a ton of money in childcare. They're paying a ton of money to put food on the table. And they can't afford a mortgage right now. And so they have no other choice but to live in an apartment right now. And if you are trying to rent, particularly in central Ohio, it's really expensive. So I think it's one of those things where I think about what I was paying when my husband and I got out of college 20-some years ago, and it's nothing like it is now. And I can remember what we were paying for childcare for our 2 kids. And when they went into school, even private school, into kindergarten, it was like getting a raise. So I just think that there are a lot of pressures economically on young families right now. And so the ability for them to even own a home is it's very difficult in these times. And so in the meantime, we have to be, I think, a little compassionate about how people just can't go and buy even a $250,000 home, given the cost of everything.
Great dialogue. We have elected officials who are making decisions every day on behalf of the community, and they're elected. They're, as I said earlier, and their job is to overlook the schools, the city, the county, and the development and so forth. And I know both of you have a wealth of knowledge. Lydia, you're throughout the state of Ohio every day. Kenny, you're throughout the region every day. Do you have any examples out there of successful community-driven development projects that have actually improved the quality of life for residents, and what strategies have been used to assist in the collaboration and the efforts for those developments?
So there, first of all, you should feel really, really good about, in general, the overall state of things in Ohio. I have the pleasure and the honor of traveling on behalf of the governor and lieutenant governor all over this state, and there are some really great things happening. And it's not just, there's some great job creators out there and great things to celebrate relative to that, but there are some great community development projects that are happening. Communities all over the state of Ohio that are suddenly embracing waterfront development, whether that's along the Miami, whether that's along the Ohio, or up at the Maumee in Northwest Ohio. People are actually starting to go towards the water again. And they're building these beautiful parks and public spaces, and it is really enhancing the overall quality of life. But they're utilizing these dollars that are either available from the federal government, whether they've put on their own levy to be able to support the projects, whether they're issuing bonds to be able to pay for them, whether they're dollars that we've made available. But communities are really being, you call it planful. I think that's a great term, by the way. They're being very smart, and they're thinking about the future because they're trying to create these places. They're doing a ton of placemaking because they're in competition for people and for talent, and they want to be that next place that everybody wants to be, or where everybody wants to be. And so, whether it's in Lucas County, whether we're in Richland County, whether we're in Warren County, whether we're down in and around Appalachia, which I will tell you, we're investing $500 million in the 32 counties in Appalachia. Look out. It's going to be incredible to see what happens there out of that investment and what we can leverage. But things are changing all around this great state, and we get to see some really incredible projects. But they're leveraging the dollars that the governor and lieutenant governor have prioritized, the General Assembly has said yes to, and even here in Union County, I know we've done some brownfield projects, we've done some projects with the land bank, we've done projects with the water or wastewater plant. There's just a lot of great things that are happening, but the whole point is this. Again, we're creating environments that are conducive for private sector investment, which ultimately helps create great spaces and an incredible quality of life where people want to call it home. And I just think there are a lot of great examples of that all around the state.
I think I could name some specifics, but I'll just be general about it. I think the best developments are when you have the conversations you're having tonight, and you come up with plans, and you open yourself up and say, hey, we really want to attract some of this. It's interesting what's happening now. Different types of developers are showing up. There's lots of creativity. The way that the finances are working now, you almost are forced into having a mixed-use development where you have retail and single-family homes, multifamily, and some commercial, and you create some walkable places, at least partially, and you're seeing really different types of development. And if you think about this going back in history, the way the economy was working at that particular time when those developments happened, if you double-click on it, that's what drove it all. And right now we have soaring interest rates. They're not the highest they've ever been, but they went up faster than they ever have before. And we've got different social dynamics than we ever have before. People working out of their homes more than ever in history and stuff. And so you're going to end up with some different types of developments. The best of those developments are going to be public-private partnerships. And I just say, when you open yourselves up to those possibilities, you'd be surprised who shows up and the kind of things that be created. That's why when we say no, or maybe even hell no, we don't want anyone else, or we don't want any development, I think you kind of shut down any creativity that could happen. And I do see communities in our region doing some of that, and that's their choice, of course. And but I do think over the long term, people that open themselves up are really thoughtful about it and say, we want to keep going forward at whatever pace you choose. You're going to win, and you're going to separate yourself over time and have healthier, more sustainable tax bases and communities, and probably better schools and everything else on top of that.
Great answers. Both of you were very instrumental recently in winning Ohio's largest economic development project, Intel, as we're all fully aware. It's going to have pressures on the growth of Central Ohio for many years to come. The first Intel was Honda back in the 1970s, which leaders at that time made some great decisions to bring Honda to Marysville, which is now invested $15 billion in the state of Ohio, which is pretty remarkable. Both of those developments, and Honda's recent announcement with LG and the battery plant and Intel, those are all great announcements. Both facilities are about the same distance from Marysville. Can you talk a little bit about those impacts of those large, massive projects and what they mean to Marysville, what it means to housing in our region and in the state of Ohio?
I'll be a little bit contrarian. I don't think that like Intel by itself creates enormous housing pressure around our region. At the end of the day, I mean, over time there'll be a lot of growth with it, just like you've had here around Honda over a 42-year period now. But it'll take a long time for a bunch of that stuff to happen, and it's easy to sort of blame, one of the projects or something for some of our soaring housing prices. To be honest with you, all the things we're talking about on the housing front tonight started 15 years ago, and it's compounded into this, and it just happens to be that things like LG and Honda's reinvestment in this part of the state, and Intel and others happen to come about right now. The other thing they do is they create this very positive wave of, wow, this is going on in our part of the state, and it attracts people. And if I'm graduating college, maybe in a neighboring state or even in Ohio, and I'm making a bet on my future about where I might buy that, go into that apartment or want to start my career, I might be gravitating to that place. And it may not have anything to do with any of those projects, but they come to the market because there's lots of positive energy going on. And I think that's a good thing. We want people to do that, right? And so I'm not defending that it doesn't have any effect, but I think that we've overhyped this as, creating this upside down housing market we have. And in fact, it has had nothing to do with it, at least in the long term. We've been here for about 200 years in the state capital, and we've created most of our own problems in our region over the 200 years. And Intel has only built a basement out there in the last year, and only has about 100 people that are working there right now. And so over time, they'll have a bigger impact on us. By the way, I keep reminding people of this. We have a very rapidly changing world and economy, and by the end of this decade, some of the bigger employers that we have in our region, I don't expect to have the same number of people, and some of those companies may not exist at all. If I look back over the history of, the employers that have come and gone across our region, and so these things that are being added are not always just simply additive. They are, they're replenishing, they're diversifying, they're gonna replace and be the dominant employers in the future, and some others will go away, and we'll look back and think we'll be more thankful that we did some of this, because the world's going to continue to be a wild ride for the next 10 years.
I would agree. We've been talking about housing and the housing pressures, not only in central Ohio, but all over the state, and we've been doing that since 2019. I've been talking about housing issues in Findlay since 2012 when I got elected. for a very long time, we hadn't developed a new housing subdivision, a single-family housing subdivision since 2008. So, and Findlay's a, growing community in terms of jobs. So I just would say that I don't think that the issues that we're experiencing right now are due to those two big projects. I think that they'll be compounded. The issues we have are going to be compounded by it, but they're not necessarily due to that.
Great. In closing, I have a very softball question for both of you. First, I want you to answer a couple things. One, what do you see? What's the favorite part of your job? And then two, how do you see Ohio in 10 years? I don't know who wants to take that. That's a broad question. In a few sentences. So what is your favorite part of your job? And then secondly, where do you see Ohio?
Hanging out with Eric is just... I actually am joking about that, but I think actually doing our work and being with the professionals. I was on with her staff at 7:30, 8 o'clock this morning. We have interactions. We have a crew of people here that they work day and night. Matt McAllister is back here from our team. No one knows who most of these folks are across Ohio because they sort of work behind the scenes. And when ribbon cutting stuff, they kind of go to the side. But you should know that there's hundreds of people across Ohio in the community development and economic development industry that they work their tail off, and they're so passionate about Ohio. And you're right about it being Ohio's time, but there's a professional group of people out there trying to figure this out constantly, and I don't think they're often celebrated the way they should be for their really tireless work. And I'm sure we get things right and we get things wrong, and if you look back over time, we'll wish we did some things differently. But we're getting a lot of things right in Ohio, and that's why some of the success is happening. And in 10 years from now, you're going to have a bunch of corporate names across Central Ohio that we probably don't know about yet, maybe haven't arrived yet, or maybe haven't been created out of entrepreneurs that are dreaming up these ideas now. And I think they're going to be, our landscape's going to look quite a bit different. And I would bet even more so on our part of the world. First of all, we live in the best country in the world, and the best place to start, scale, grow, expand, run a global business is here. And there's lots of things favoring our part of the world. Climate change, where do I want to put myself in a good position for that? I think we're arguably the best part of North America for that. And we still have all the advantages that we had before, great access to the rest of the country. And that final thing is, while it's getting more expensive, I would bet that we're still going to be a very affordable, quality place to live in 10 years. And I bet there'll be a room that'll look a little different than this, and somebody will replace our faces up here, but there'll be hardworking people trying to do these same things and figure it out too. And I hope we do our job and make their job just a little bit easier.
Well said. Favorite part of my job is being able to go visit the little pockets of the state that don't necessarily get talked about. They don't grab all the headlines. There are great people, great projects happening, and it's great to be able to have a chance to see people, thank them for the work that they're doing, and see the real action that's happening in Ohio. Mike DeWine said about 4 years ago that the things that we're doing now, we're planting the seeds now that we may not get to see the fruits of in our lifetime. Someone once said that you plant acorns for when you need oak trees, and the things that we're doing right now are exactly that. And 10 years from now, I definitely see Ohio as this dominant force in the country. And we will definitely be on the map and be number one in a lot of things. And the investments that we're making now are going to pay big dividends for the people in our state. And the people who are in positions of community and economic development, our local leaders, the things that they're doing right now to position our communities to be successful, they're going to be talked about for a really long time because they're taking advantage of the environment that we have right now. And yeah, we'll talk about COVID and the pandemic and the impact that had on that moment in time. But the way we've come out of this and the things that we've done and the actions and the steps that we've taken to really to plant our seed here, it's going to really stake Ohio as the heart of it all. And we're going to have some really cool things to show for it.
Awesome. The wealth of knowledge, the positive vibes that you guys both present and in your work is remarkable, and you've been a great friend of Marysville and Union County. We appreciate all the hard work you do and joining us tonight for this dialogue, this discussion. Let's give our speakers a round of applause. So we have one event left. That's on November 1st. We have Betsy Goldstein, who's going to talk about the Intel development in Licking County. And she talks at a lot of different groups about the development, what it means to Licking County, what it means to Ohio. We also have Jamie Green, who's done a lot of work in Union County, but also just recently completed a land use study and has brought together 18 jurisdictions in Licking County to talk about the growth and development there and what it all means to those jurisdictions, to the schools, to the townships, to the cities, to the county. And so we encourage you on November 1st at 5:30 to come out and discuss those issues. And again, thank you all for being here tonight and have a great evening. And go Bucks! Go Bucks.